The thing about pretending not to care is that it works until the night you're drunk enough to realize you've been lying to yourself all along. And standing there, watching him loosen his tie with that uncharacteristic softness in his eyes, I knew I was in trouble. It had started as an ordinary Friday night at the firm. Ordinary, if you considered working until 10 p.m. ordinary. I was the junior associate, the one who picked up coffee, carried files, and listened to people laugh about how the new kid looks too naive for litigation. But that night, a corporate victory brought out champagne, music, and for the first time an invitation to join the team instead of just cleaning up after them. And there he was, Marcus Hale, the senior attorney everyone feared, cold, precise, merciless in the courtroom. The kind of man who didn't just walk into a room, controlled it. To me, he was untouchable. Or at least, that's what I thought until the third glass of bourbon had him leaning a little too close when no one else was watching. "You're quieter than usual," he murmured, his voice low enough that the noise of the party couldn't drown it out. "I didn't think anyone noticed me," I replied, trying to laugh, but my chest was already tightening. His eyes lingered. "I notice. It should have ended there. I should have brushed it off, walked away, gone back to playing the invisible kid at the firm. But when the party spilled into the streets, and I found myself half-dragged into Marcus's sleek, dark car, I didn't resist. The ride was a blur. The city lights bled into streaks, my head swaying against the leather seat. He didn't speak, and I didn't dare ask where we were going. By the time I stumbled into his apartment, modern, cold, every surface polished like him, I was dizzy, but not from the alcohol. I remember collapsing onto his couch, laughing nervously. "I'm not supposed to be here." Marcus stood at the counter, pouring water like it was a ritual. "Maybe you are," he said. Something in his voice cracked me wide open. This wasn't the ruthless attorney who humiliated witnesses and won cases with surgical precision. This was a man tired of being cold. He sat beside me, close enough that the fabric of his sleeve brushed against mine. I caught the faintest scent of whiskey and cedarwood cologne. My pulse was frantic, every second stretching into something unbearably fragile. And then reached out, just a touch on my wrist, light, almost cautious, but it burned through me like fire. "You shouldn't look at me like that," he whispered. "Like what?" "Like you're waiting for me to break." The air between us snapped. I don't remember who moved first. Maybe it was him leaning in, maybe it was me finally collapsing into the gravity that had pulled me toward him since the day I walked into the firm. His lips were soft, nothing like the harsh way he lived his life. For a moment, the world outside dissolved, and it was just two men on a couch, clinging to something neither of us knew we were starving for. But the morning was merciless. I woke with my head pounding, my body still tangled in the memory of him. He was already up, buttoning his shirt, his face a mask of indifference. "Last night doesn't change anything," he said flatly. The words sliced through me. I wanted to ask why he'd held me so tenderly if it meant nothing. I wanted to scream that his touch had felt like the only real thing I'd known in months. But instead, I nodded like a good soldier, collected my coat, and walked out. The next weeks were torture. At work, he was colder than ever. He avoided my eyes, spoke to me only when necessary, and treated me like I was nothing more than a tool in his arsenal. But every time his hand brushed mine when passing a file, or when I caught his gaze lingering just a second too long, I felt that night all over again. I hated him for it, and I hated myself more for still wanting him. One evening, after a brutal deposition, I snapped. I stayed late, slamming files on my desk, trying to drown my anger in paperwork. Marcus appeared in the doorway, his tie loosened, his jaw tight. "You're burning yourself out," he said. I didn't look at him. "Why do you care?" His silence was heavy. "Then, because I do." That was it. The dam broke. I spun around, fury and longing tangling in my chest. "You care? You can't even look me in the eye without pretending last night was some kind of mistake. Do you have any idea what it's like to feel like I don't exist until you decide I do?" He stepped inside, closing the door behind him. "I never said you didn't exist." "Then what am I to you, Marcus? A mistake you regret? A distraction you can't afford?" His eyes darkened. For the first time, the mask slipped. "You're the one thing I can't control. And that terrifies me." The room spun. My chest ached. And then he was in front of me, his hand gripping mine, not rough, but desperate. "I don't know how to do this," he confessed. His voice cracked, and it shattered something inside me. "I've spent my whole life being cold because it was easier. But you, God, you make me want to be soft, and I don't know if I can survive that." I should have walked away. I should have told him it wasn't enough. But I didn't. I pulled him down, kissed him hard, and for once he didn't fight it. He kissed me back like a drowning man clinging to air. From then on, we lived in a quiet war. At the firm, we were nothing colleagues, distant, untouchable. But behind closed doors, we were everything. We burned through nights tangled in each other, both terrified and addicted. Every stolen moment was a risk. Every touch was a promise neither of us could say out loud. The turning point came on a stormy night in December. The case had gone south, tempers high, the team blaming Marcus for a miscalculation that wasn't his fault. He locked himself in his office, and I found him there, his hands shaking as he pressed them against his desk. I'd never seen him so human. "Marcus," I said gently. He didn't look up. "Everyone thinks I'm unbreakable. They need me to be. But I'm not." I crossed the room, rested my hand on his shoulder. For the first time, he didn't resist. He leaned into me, just enough to let me know he was tired of fighting. "You don't have to be unbreakable with me," I whispered. That was it. That was the moment everything shifted. From then, he stopped pretending. He let me see him, not the ruthless attorney, not the cold strategist, but the man who laughed softly when I teased him, who brushed my hair out of my eyes when I fell asleep on his couch, who kissed me like it was the only truth he had left. It wasn't easy. The world outside was still cruel, the firm still demanding, and Marcus still learning how to be tender. But every time he slipped, every time he grew cold, I reminded him with a kiss, a touch, a whispered truth. He didn't have to be alone anymore. And for the first time in years, I stopped feeling invisible. Because in his arms, I wasn't just noticed. I was seen, and that was enough. Thank you for listening. Don't forget to like and subscribe to stay updated with the latest videos.